Hello and welcome to the Bundesliga Show, brought to you by Over the Bar, with your hosts, myself, Rory Petre, and of course, Mark Broadhurst over in Germany. So thank you for tuning in wherever you are. Sit back and enjoy the show. Before we go over to Mark, as usual, for our anagram segment, please do yourselves and us a massive favour by clicking the big red button, subscribe if you are watching on YouTube, and to also draw your attention to the little bell icon in the corner as well. That will send you notifications so you do not miss a show or a thing. If you're listening to us on a podcast, please do click the subscribe button as well so you do not miss out on anything else. Thank you very much indeed. So it's a very exciting show that we've got for you this evening or this morning, depending on when you're listening. Not only do we have all our usual content, we've got our first ever guest today. Very exciting stuff. And we've also got some news on a new mini-series that myself and Mark and possibly a few other people are going to be working on. More on that later. So on with the show. Mark, so it's over to you for the anagram segment to get the juices flowing. What have you got for us this week on the anagram front?
Okay, guys, so as always, let's remember our anagram from last week, which, as you can see on the screen, was BILE iron none. So remember the rules of the game. Remember, it has to be something related to the Bundesliga. So it can either be a club, a player, or a manager. And actually this week, we unfortunately didn't get any people who got it correct, which is actually the first time since we've been doing this series that nobody got it correct. So come on, guys, you got to up your game. So for any of you watching that got it last minute, it was indeed Union Berlin, as you can see on the bottom of your screen, a Bundesliga club, one of my favorite Bundesliga clubs as well. So yeah, so Union Berlin was your anagram for last week. Now let's have a look at this week's new anagram, which, as you can see at the bottom of your screen, is manual jangle ins. Manual jangle ins. So just to remind you guys, it's got to be something related to the Bundesliga. It's got to be a club, a player, or a manager. I just want to remind you guys to either comment underneath the YouTube videos, or if you're listening down on our podcast, I'm just going to read it for you a little bit slower so you can take a pen now and write it down just for your enjoyment. So it's MANUAL, manual, JANGLE, jangle, INNS, ins. So yeah, so have fun with that, guys, and check in next week and find out what the correct answer was to this week 5 of our review. Sorry. Enjoy. So
Good
over
stuff.
to Rory with the correct scores.
Yeah, so as per usual, we'll just quickly spin through the results of the weekend and then we'll be straight into our featured games and we will introduce our first ever guest. So starting off on Friday night, it was a 1-1 draw between VfB Stuttgart and Köln. Stuttgart, incredibly quick start, 26 seconds I think it took them to score, so it was a good result for Köln in the end. On to the Saturday afternoon game, so Bayern Munich were looking emphatic again with a massive 5-0 win at home to Eintracht Frankfurt. We also had 2-1 home win for RB Leipzig, so that just about keeps them at the foot of the table for now. The other afternoon games were Union Berlin drawing 1-1 at home to Freiburg, and there was a 5-goal thriller involving Mainz and Borussia Mönchengladbach, which ended up being 3-2 to the visitors. Then on to this Saturday evening kickoff, which of course was the derby between Borussia Dortmund and Schalke. Went the way of the form book, 3-0 to the home side Dortmund on that occasion. And we've just had two more games on the Sunday afternoon as we're recording. So we've seen Wolfsburg break their Sunday duck, and get a 2-1 win at home to Arminia Bielefeld. And we've just seen Werder Bremen draw 1-1 with Hoffenheim, with Bayer Leverkusen and Augsburg to come. Monday evening, which is slightly odd for the Bundesliga. So they're the results. Now on to the more exciting part, which is our feature games, and we now get to introduce our first ever guest on the show, which is fantastic. We're very glad to have him on. His name is Nik Wildhagen. He is a presenter on Talking Fussball, which is another Bundesliga show. They have their own podcast and their own Patreon content, which we'll be able to give you a bit more information about at the end of the show. So without further ado, we'll bring him in right now.
Hi guys, how you doing?
Guten Tag, servus.
Hi Nik.
How's it going then? How is everything?
Germany? It's going good. It's going good. It's been an exciting weekend of some great Bundesliga action. I'm still in awe of that Haaland goal, but I'm sure we get to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So now that Nik's introduced himself, let's move on to our first feature game, which, as you can see on the bottom of your screen, is going to be the Mainz 2 Gladbach 3 game, which was a really, really entertaining match on Saturday afternoon. Yeah. Nik, did you catch that game? And if so, what did you think about it?
It was a slightly odd game. I mean, Mainz pressed to Gladbach in the beginning moments of that match, and it looked like the side that was most likely to score, but in the end it was Gladbach who broke the deadlock first. Then Mainz got back into it through 2 goals by Matchday, who hadn't scored since Matchday 1. So things looked up, and second half, Gladbach showed how much depth they actually have on the bench, bringing in guys like Neuhaus and Thuram. And that turned the match around for them. And once Mainz conceded that 2-2 equalizer, you just saw that team looked uncomfortable. Heads went down, and the thinking seemed to be, oh, here we go again.
Yeah.
And in the end, Matthias Ginter was left alone on a corner kick and got up into the air. Wasn't really pressured by anybody, and headed it home ever so sweetly. And flattering result for Gladbach in terms of that Mainz had enough chances to actually get that, 3-1 goal earlier in the second half. But in the end, it was a balanced game with loads of chances going both ways, entertaining. But if you're a lover of good defending, I don't think you got your money's worth in that one.
Definitely not.
Yeah. And Nik, what did you think about the fact that Gladbach did decide to go with such a weakened side? Because that really surprised me, because I know that they are playing Champions League, and I guess it's like you've got to make the most of this opportunity. But I was really, really shocked to see that, to be honest, that they decided to go so weak on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, who was the guy playing in defensive midfield? His name escapes me, but he's an academy player who came in for Gladbach, and it was like, oh, who's that guy? I haven't seen, other than I think it's the first or second match I watched of Gladbach this season, and I hadn't seen him before, so that was kind of strange. And I think Michael Rose is thinking that, okay, we have a really tight schedule at the moment, and we have to make sure that everybody pulls through, and that we don't catch too many injuries at the start of the season, because with Corona and everything, the schedule is more jam-packed than it ever has been, and some of these guys are even going to go off and play Euros at the end of the season, and it's incredibly tough for the players. So I think you will see a lot of odd team selections throughout the entire season, to be honest. And having 5 changes like we currently have is going to make that occur even more often, I would assume. So, I think it seems kind of odd this early on in the season, but there's more of that to come, I would believe, and not only for Gladbach.
Yeah. Do you think, Nik, from a Mainz point of view, like you mentioned, when it went to 2-2, they were very much of the thinking, here we go again. It's been a decent performance up to this point, and then the inevitable seemed to happen. Do you think confidence is a big thing in football. Do you think they're in real trouble now?
Yeah. I mean, if you read the table, yes, they are in real trouble.
Have you got any positive words for any potential Mainz fans who might be listening or watching for an escape at any point, anytime soon, perhaps?
Yeah, I think they did the same under Jurgen Klopp, losing the first 5 matches of the season, and they managed to stay in the league that season. So it has been done before. Things can be turned around. Biggest question right now at the club is if Jan Moritz Lichte is given the chance to, become the coach full time. You've seen some improvement since he took over. I mean, that relationship between Achim Bayerlotzer and that squad of players was basically broken. It broken down entirely after the whole saga surrounding Adam Schalai. And Jan Moritz Lichte seems to have a better connection with that group of players. So that is certainly positive for Mainz. But he needs results, and he needs them quickly. If he's going to lose the next 1 or 2 matches, I think Ruben Schröder and the officials at Mainz are going to be forced to act and install a new head coach. And where that leaves Lichte, if he's going to be the assistant coach once again, or if he's going to be distributed somewhere in the club system, stands to be seen. But yeah, I think things can be turned around, and the table this early on, it sort of lies. And when you see the improvement from once he took over and that first game against Union Berlin, which was an absolutely horrific 4-0 defeat, and to now, you see a significant improvement. And once they break that duck and to get that first win or get that first point, they might be more confident and go into matches thinking, hey, we actually do stand a chance.
Indeed.
Yeah, I think obviously Mainz is a club that's had a great tradition with good managers. Obviously you mentioned Jurgen Klopp, but also Thomas Tuchel as well also came from Mainz as well. So, I mean, maybe it's time for them to unveil the next great manager of European football. You don't know. Yeah. And keep them up against all odds. Yeah.
I mean, they have sort of failed to bring that, that second, now that third European great into the picture since Tuchel left. I mean, I think he was followed by that Swiss guy. What was his name? Martin Schmidt, who also was in charge of Augsburg. He really, seemed to be a decent enough coach, but not really somebody who struck me as a revolutionary coach who could attack big challenges like some of the greatest teams in Europe. And the same with Sandro Schwarz, who actually was in the running for that job at Schalke that in the end went to Manuel Baum. But mentioning Sandro Schwarz, I mean, some of the talk at Mainz has actually been, I talked with the Kicker journalist about that on our show, was actually, well, why not bring back Sandro Schwarz? He's still on our books. They're paying his contract. Why not bring him back and see how that goes? And some of the clubs, they might have to get creative in the hiring process, because Mainz and some of the other clubs in the Bundesliga that are really struggling financially, and Mainz is one of those clubs.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the second feature game we want to look at today, which is actually Nik's team. Werder Bremen made a 1-1 draw against Hoffenheim. The match just finished just less than an hour ago, actually. Yeah. So let's go to you, Nik, straight away. What did you make of this game, and are you happy with Werder's performance?
I'm happy with the result. Werder pretty much scored from the first attack in the 5th minute. Maxi Eggestein poking home a cross that was sent into the area by Gebre Selassie, who's turning out to be a very vital player for them this season. And after that 1-0 goal, Werder pretty much defended for the rest of the match. I think Werder created in total 5 shots throughout the entire 90 minutes. Hoffenheim did more, had the better chances. The Danish player, Robert Skov, hit the crossbar from a free kick in the second half. Hoffenheim had some decent enough chances, but not really the big chances that you think they should have, ought to have tucked away. But yeah, I think Hoffenheim was going probably in that dressing room when the Vids are starting right now, thinking, well, we should have gotten those 3 points, and Werder is there thinking, okay, we took our chances, we defended well enough for once. So okay, it's a fair enough result. But yeah, for Werder, it's important to gather points from these sort of tight matches, because whilst Hoffenheim probably was the better side, it was really a hard-fought affair. Both sides had a lot of defending to do, especially Werder. And Werder did well enough keeping Hoffenheim out. And if they manage to do that against other opponents of Hoffenheim's caliber, the season might not be as dramatic as last season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think certainly looking at the result on the face of it, it was obviously quite an exciting start to the game, as there was 2 goals in the space of about 20 odd minutes of thinking, here we go, here comes a classic. And it didn't quite pan out that way. However, when you look on the face of it as a result, as you mentioned, Nick, you're probably more pleased with the point rather than the performance. But as we've seen this Hoffenheim team tear some fantastic teams apart, obviously we've seen them already take Bayern Munich to the cleaners, of course. So as you mentioned, it's all about accumulating points. And after the start of the season was a poor one for your side, are you quite pleased with their form and their grittiness to get results really so far this season since that first game?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really seen one single match besides the Schalke match where Werder was the better side. That match against Bielefeld, the other one that they won, they were quite lucky. Better in the first half. Bielefeld took them apart, and the second half just failed to score. Against Freiburg, really lucky not to be 2-0 down because of a VAR interception. Then they got back into that one. So yeah, I think in terms of the points accumulated, Werder can be best pleased with 8 points. It's a decent enough start to the season. I mean, if your goal is to gather 40 points, and that is what Werder's goal is going to be this season, given that they've released David Klaassen out of financial necessity, basically stopping the club from going bankrupt before the end of the year. The focus is going to be on accumulating enough points to stay in the league, and results like this are certainly going to help. And I mean, they have a few tough matches coming up. I think 1 or 2 weeks from now they're playing against Bayern, but then again they have some other matches like the one against Köln, and these are going to be the important matches this season, because last season where Werder really failed was against the team at the lower half of the table. That's the matches they lost. Furthermore, Werder was actually quite dreadful at home last season. So far this season, they've already accumulated 4 points from 3 home matches, which is not brilliant, but it's decent enough. So if you want to stay in the league, that's the way to go. But defending looks decent, but going forward, there's really not an awful lot to be excited about.
Speaking of going forward, then Nick, obviously as a Manchester United fan, I'd be very aware that we've sent Tadic Chong on loan to yourselves. Have you seen enough of him in the opening games to suggest he might be a good acquisition, or do you think he's just not made for the Bundesliga either?
I don't know. I think it's too early to judge, but what I've seen from him so far, he started the match against Hertha, where he actually was the quickest player on the pitch. He had the quickest sprint of all 22 guys out there during that match. But he doesn't think quick enough. He doesn't distribute the ball quick enough at times going forward. And but it's a process, and some players adapt, some players don't, and it stands to be seen whether or not he's going to be a player who adapts. Today he only got 3 or 4 minutes, and that's obviously not enough to tell an awful lot about his potential. In any ways, he had to do defending most of the time. Didn't do too badly there. Had a couple of good clearances, but obviously Werder hasn't brought him on to have good clearances
Yes.
Yeah. And just a bit more on you personally, Nick. Like, what made you decide to be a Werder fan? Like, is there a particular reason, or is it like a family thing, or is it just a love?
It's TV. Basically, I mean, I was born in Germany, and when I was 4 years old, I got to see a match of them on television, and I fell in love with them, and yeah, that was just it.
Yeah.
You don't choose your favorite team. I mean, well, some people do. Some people shop around for their favorite teams, but if you're sort of if you've read Fever Pitch, for instance, I'm more that mold of a supporter rather than the punter who just distributes his love to whoever is doing best at the moment. I mean, there are a fair amount of people around who do that, but yeah, that's not for me.
And finally, Nick, just on Werder, if you had to say, if I pressed you for a prediction at the end of the season, where you're saying your team are going to finish at the end of the season?
Well, right now they're in a Europa League place, but I don't think they're going to be there. I'd be very happy with anything from 15th place and upwards. Really, if you pressed me really hard, I think I actually released my table predictions at the start of the season, and I think I put Werder in 12. And having said that, I at that time I thought I was really optimistic on their behalf.
Yeah. Just one last thing about Werder. I got to say, I was lucky enough to see Werder play in Nuremberg because I'm a Nuremberg fan, actually. Yeah, and it was about 2 years ago, and they played over here in Nuremberg because I'm based in Nuremberg as well. And like they had the best maybe some of the best fans that I've seen. Really, they were awesome. Yeah, like the team was not great in all honesty, but like the passion from the fans, and like they just sung for 95 minutes, and then after the game you could talk to them. It was really great. Yeah. So no matter how poor the team is for Werder, you've always got the fans, Yeah.
You do. I mean, tell you one story. Back in the day of Viktor Skripnik, another coach who's better forgotten. Werder was really in a tight spot with 4 or 5 matches left at the end of the season, and the club didn't know what to do. Fire Skripnik or stick with him. They stuck with him, and what the fans actually did, they created something called the Green and White Wonderwall, which saw them line the streets of Bremen and welcome the team bus to the stadium, and 10,000 people waving flags and cheering on the team on the way to the stadium was a massive boost to the team, who was in a dire situation, and fans had expected better, but they decided instead of shouting and grumbling and booing and jeering, they decided that they should throw all of their support behind their team, and that in the end saw Werder Bremen secure their place in the Bundesliga that season. And I think it speaks to what sort of fans they actually are compared to some of the other fans. I'm not going to mention HSV.
Yeah. And a lot of people in Germany, they've told me that like Werder Bremen, it's like a religion. It's not really a club because it's so important in the area, because the Bremen area is more like a kind of working class area mostly. And I think it's like, you can probably compare it to like the northwest of England a little bit, like your Manchesters, your Liverpools, and the clubs are they're like the kind of, there's so much of a part of the community, as much of just being a football club,
Yeah, it's not like Berlin where, you have one gazillion options of what you can do on a weekend.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are certainly differences between the northern regions of England and Bremen. I think Bremen is a Hanseatic town. Traditionally speaking, it was a rich town. It's not anymore. But I mean, that sort of history sticks. It's ingrained in Bremen's DNA. But Werder Bremen, it's a big deal in Bremen. It's pretty much the biggest thing coming out of Bremen these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing your insight into what Bremen is to you. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the next feature game, which obviously was probably the billed as the biggest game of the weekend. But I think, to be honest, as many would have expected, it was one-sided. Is probably an understatement, in all honesty. Which ended in a Dortmund 3, Schalke 0. Yeah. I mean, it was very, very much a one-sided game. Yeah. Nick, do you have any extra thoughts on that? I know you wanted to mention Haaland's goal, obviously, was one of the key moments. Yeah.
It was. Yeah, absolutely brilliant through ball by Jadon Sancho. I mean, that when you see that understanding between of the two of them, which starts with Haaland basically holding up the ball and, whilst Schalke is retreating, and the two of them start that attack on their own. I mean, he finds him, and when he finds him, he just sprints at 35 kilometers an hour, and he's such a tall guy, but he's so damn quick too. It's just such a lethal combination. And when you then see that beautifully weighted through ball by Jadon Sancho, which was played to perfection. I mean, if he'd hit it any harder, Haaland wouldn't have gotten to it. If he'd hit it any softer, the Schalke defender would have cut it out. But it was just weighted so beautifully that Haaland then got onto the end of that pass. However, it got onto his wrong foot and the left foot, and he had to touch the ball with that quite quickly. And after he had a perfect first touch with his weaker foot, he then has the presence of mind to just simply chip the ball beautifully over the keeper, which, it looks so easy, but this wasn't this wasn't sort of an easy goal by any means. It was a difficult to take goal, and he made it look like child's play. Absolutely brilliant goal, and then going up 2-0, it basically sealed the deal for Dortmund in that derby, because Schalke, they weren't looking dangerous going forward. But when it's 1-0, you always, and particularly Dortmund, can always find a way of messing something up and defend.
Indeed.
And that was important. Add to that header by Mats Hummels, which was absolutely brilliant. Carrying header from a corner kick, and deserved 3-0 win for Dortmund in the derby, and good way to get back after that dreadful outing in midweek against Lazio in the Champions League. And one of the things that always strikes me when Dortmund loses in the Champions League or when they lose in the Bundesliga, there's always talk about Lucien Favre. Is he the right guy? And I was looking at his stats as a Dortmund coach, and he's actually averaging 2.02 points per match, which is better than Jurgen Klopp's record at the club. Wow. Granted, Klopp stayed there for a long time, but that is, I think that is telling you something. I think is the problem for Favre and Dortmund is the fact that Bayern are just so damn good, and how far they've progressed under Favre sort of somehow gets lost when you compare them to Bayern.
Nick, then, do you think, with certainly with the stats pointing towards Favre doing a good enough job, and in usual circumstances, perhaps Dortmund would be the team to beat? Do you think this particular crop of players, the fact that now maybe Sancho can just get his head down and forget about transfer speculation, can they mount a serious title challenge this season, do you think?
I mean, what Dortmund fans should take a lot of heart from is the fact that you had players like Mo Dahoud in that first team lineup against Schalke, who don't usually get a lot of playing time. Mm-hmm. And as we talked about earlier with the Gladbach game, with Marco Rose, throwing in some really sort of wild cards into the mix, it's going to be key for Dortmund that those second string players are going to perform on their day when they're given the chance. And if they can do that on a regular basis, they could. But I mean, that, as we mentioned earlier, that has sort of been the problem for Dortmund, though. Whenever they've, had matches against sides like Augsburg or Union Berlin last season, when, some of those guys were given the chance, they've ended up stumbling over themselves and, ending up with the unnecessary draws or losses. And if they can find a way of getting rid of that, they can mount a serious title challenge. But I have my doubts. I mean, if I were to put my own money on who's going to win the championship this season, it would definitely be Bayern München.
Yeah. And what about obviously at the other end of the table? I mean, Schalke are just having a nightmare, aren't they? 21 games. They've not won a league game since January 2020. I mean, for a club which is really considered to be one of the big, probably the third, or even in some people's eyes, the second biggest club in Germany, you know? I mean, how can it go so wrong for Schalke, you know? Nik, what do you think? Like, what's happened to them?
I think a number of things coming together. I mean, once again, it's financial instability, which started before Corona even. I mean, the federal state of North Rhine-Westphalia actually had to give Schalke a bank guarantee of, I think, some 40 million euros in order to stay fluid, which is not necessarily boding well for them. Additionally, I do think it's a question of, you know, that team maybe being put. Yeah, it's not the strongest side, but they are underperforming. And you know, we talked about psychology earlier. It's you know, this team doesn't have any sort of self-belief in itself. Additionally, they had sort of a strenuous relationship with their last coach, and what Schalke failed to do was getting rid of David Wagner after last season. I think they would have probably fared better if they've brought in another manager and said, okay, great, you can work with the players in the run-up of the season, and we take it from there. Given that the financial situation was so dire at the club thought, okay, we just pray that David Wagner is going to find some way of turning this around, reconnect with players, and, you know, we'll be all right. And obviously they weren't. So now they're in some pickle because Manuel Baum really hasn't found a way of turning things around either. But you know, he's been there for 3 matches. They've lost against Borussia Dortmund and RB Leipzig. And to be fair, those are 2 of the sides you would expect them to lose against under normal circumstances as well. So what's going to be more telling is the matches going forward against, you know, sides like Augsburg. Against Union Berlin, they got a draw, which is sort of like a decent enough result, but it's not really brilliant. You know, but these sort of matches, they're going to be telling you about whether or not Schalke are actually capable of maybe getting out of that match. It's still early days, and there's still an awful lot of teams down there. And right now, I mean, they're on 1 point, but hey, it's only 7 points up to the Europa League places. And, you know, that can be turned around in 5-6 weeks if they actually manage to string a few decent results together.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's move on to the final feature game, which is Rasenballsport Leipzig 2, Hertha Berlin 1. Yeah. So, I mean, not so much of a surprise, I guess, that result. Yeah, it's Nik. But obviously, I think Leipzig now are top of the league. So, yeah, do you think they can sustain this push, Nik?
No. Well, you know, I think they're going to finish towards the top end of the table. I think they're pretty much a good contender to get a Champions League spot. But yeah, I would think that they are going to face some difficulties along the way. What has been promising for them, it has to be said, is that they have sort of managed to find a way scoring goals without Timo Werner. Emil Forsberg, the Swedish playmaker, has sort of had a reawakening at that club. He really didn't play a vital role last season. This season, he's playing a much bigger role and has helped them. But yeah, once again, it's the matches against Bayern, it's the matches against Dortmund that are going to be the telling matches for them. And last season, after, you know, they were in the lead in the table after, I think, at the halfway point even. And you know, they drifted away from that. They had some silly results along the way, like 2-2 draws against bottom half sides. And yeah, I would assume that the same is going to happen to them again this season. I'm afraid. And their new striker, Alexander Sørloth, got a start. Hooray for another Norwegian playing in the Bundesliga. But yeah, I don't think he's going to be a one, going to be the sort of replacement that is going to be as vital as Timo Werner. I think that it's going to be a team job getting those goals. So far, they've done well, but obviously not having Timo Werner, it sort of robs them of that counter-attacking weapon they had against bigger teams, and Sørloth is not going to provide them that.
Picking up on that then, Nick, what you mentioned, what I kind of get from that as well is that perhaps RB are now a team that are lacking that squad depth, that especially now that we're in such a condensed period of the season, it's only going to get worse as we progress through the season. Do you think that will be the real thing that comes to bite them, when it comes to these games where they're having to reel off some of the, more squad players that would, at the end of the day, won't be able to come up with the goods? We saw Clive at the start today as well. He looks like an exciting player. Do you think, as you mentioned, Sørloth and Poulsen as a duo, will they be able to get enough goals between them to say match what Werner would have got perhaps if he was still there?
Difficult to tell. I mean, Alexander Sørloth had a dreadful time at Crystal Palace, then went to Turkey, where he did ever so well for Trabzon, but the Turkish league is not the Premier League, it's not the Bundesliga. So I would assume that he would need some time to find his way. Nagelsmann has said that he's going to, phase him in rather slowly. Now he's gotten his first start, got an assist in that start, and that is a promising enough start. But yeah, I think those two guys are going to get some goals, but if they're going to be an adequate replacement for Werner combined, yeah, maybe.
Yeah. And just one final question, Nick, as well. But I know a lot of people in Germany, they're not really particularly fond of the fact that RB Leipzig have kind of sprung to such prominence in the last few years. Yeah, obviously for reasons including that they are propped up by a kind of well-renowned drinks company. Yeah, but how do you feel about that? Because I personally, maybe it's because I'm from England and I enjoy the Premier League, and obviously the Premier League there's a lot of money involved in there, and perhaps the Bundesliga is not so accustomed to clubs being propped up by rich backers. Yeah, but how do you feel about their rise to prominence? Do you think it's a good thing for the Bundesliga?
It depends what sort of angle you take in terms of getting young, exciting players to the league, in terms of getting a team in there that is thinking in new and creative ways. This is actually pointed out in the latest edition of Soccernomics that teams and clubs like RB Leipzig have actually the luxury of being able to think in new and creative ways that other bigger clubs that have been around forever don't have. Simply because, the mechanisms of the football business they tend to be the same. Okay, if A happens, we do B, and we're always going to do that until it works. If we have 5 matches in a row where we don't win, we fire the coach, and we're not looking at any other options here because that's what we've always done. And that is the sort of thing that RB Leipzig don't have to face. They have a very friendly local press. The papers in Leipzig are really afraid to criticize them. And they're just happy to have a Bundesliga team there. Additionally, they have a lot of money. I mean, they just this summer at Red Bull came in and said, okay, we're going to alleviate you of 120 million euros of your debt. And then they go out in the press and say, oh, well, it's a sort of transaction. It's not really, get out of jail free card. It's sort of like, we got something in return, but what that something was is unclear to this very day, other than the club not being in debt anymore. So yeah, I think from that angle, sure, it's a positive thing because it gives you a young, creative team that thinks in new ways. But if you take the fan point of view, where 50+1 stands very strong, and when you take the point of view that you want fans to be involved in most ways, and fan involvement is not really something that RB are strong on. And if that's the sort of thing that brings you to the Bundesliga and what made you fall in love with the Bundesliga, which is personally is for me, you don't really want a club like RB or Hoffenheim, for that matter, in that league. You prefer, chaotic 80-60 Munich or Nuremberg or Kaiserslautern.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Good stuff. So Nik, thank you very much for coming on the show. You've been our first ever guest, and you've been our best guest as well so far. Thank you very much for coming on. For everyone that is listening and watching, please give Nik a follow on Twitter. His Twitter handle is at Nor Musings, or you can search for Norwegian Musings as well. Nik also is a co-host or host on Talking Fussball, which is another German Bundesliga show, which you can find on all good audio platforms. And they also have a fantastic Patreon service as well. For just a couple of dollars a month, you get tons and tons of extra features. So please do go give that a look. So Nik, thank you very much for your time. You've been a fantastic guest, and we look forward to seeing you in another podcast not too far down the road.
Cheers, guys. Pleasure being on.
Thanks, Nik.
Thank you. Thanks, Nik. Yeah. Okay. So it was great to have our first guest on the show, but for now, for the rest of the show, you've just got me and Rory. Yeah. So remember, as usual, let's just go through the rest of the games quite quickly. We'll sum them up today. So let's start with the Friday night game, the Stuttgart 2, Stuttgart 1, Köln 1. Yeah, I think a game that probably Stuttgart will feel they probably should have won in that first half. They had a lot of chances, hit the bar from a good free kick short after scoring another good goal. I mean, some of the goals that Stuttgart score are really impressive, yeah. But Rory, do you think it could be a case of 2 points dropped, that one?
Yeah, I mean, the fantastic start of Stuttgart seems to continue. The goal after 23, 24 seconds, you're thinking just go on and absolutely blitz them now, and it could be 3 points guaranteed. But on the other hand, credit to Köln for hanging on in there. Obviously, before this game, they'd also not won a league game for a long old while, and they were close to being blown away, but they've managed to hold on. Obviously, they managed to grab themselves a penalty and hold on for the rest of the game. So from their point of view, it's a vital point, especially when they're so hard to come by at the moment for them. But yeah, as you mentioned, probably 2 points drop for Stuttgart. But again, the way that they're playing is just really refreshing. So absolutely credit to them.
Definitely. And overall, another kind of positive performance, I would say, especially the first half. Yeah. Okay, and on to talking of positive performances, another 5-0 win for Bayern against Frankfurt. Yeah. The juggernaut just keeps on going, doesn't it? And talking of juggernauts, Robert Lewandowski, another hat-trick, breaking the record for the most goals scored in 5 games with 10. And just to be even more crazy, the fact that he's only played in 4 of those 5 games as well. So, I mean, it's just, for me, he's the best player in the world now, hands down. I mean, you can't deny it. I think it's an absolute crime, the fact they're not having the Ballon d'Or. I think everyone should, it's just a joke, to be honest with you, that. And it's really a bad move on the part of FIFA. I mean, it's just nonsense. Really, Rory. Would you agree that Lewandowski best player in the world now?
Yeah, I think it's hard to disagree with that, to be honest. Everything that's been going on with Messi at Barcelona, obviously Ronaldo still plays to a consistent level, and he's not had a great start to this season because he's had COVID as well. But in terms of best player in the world at this particular point, it has to be the Polish striker. He is just unplayable at the moment. Pretty sure he was a perfect hat-trick as well, left foot, right foot header, not necessarily in that order. But yeah, Bayern just, they go rolling on. Slight blot on that result was possibly the injury to Alphonso Davies. That was fairly early doors. I mean, it's not that they're lacking in squad depth, so I'm sure they'll cope. But of course, you know, with a busy schedule, they won't want that to be a long-term thing. And I mean, like when you've got Manuel Neuer scrambling back just to save the one goal there, you know, saving his clean sheet with everything that he's got, you know, and they're scoring so many at the other end. They're in superb nick, and they look like a fantastic team at the moment. So yeah, business as usual for them.
Absolutely, yeah. And then another Saturday afternoon game. It was quite an entertaining 1-1 draw, actually. It was Union Berlin 1, Freiburg 1. To be honest, another really good goal from Freiburg. Like, they're playing some good football this year. As Nick mentioned earlier on, his team, Werder Bremen, were lucky to avoid a really good Freiburg goal by the VAR last week. But this week, they got their really good goal. Yeah, it was an excellent opener. Did you see that one, Rory?
Yeah, Griffo managed to obviously curl one in superbly for the away side. So potentially at the time it was against the run of play. As Union did start quite well in that game. But as you mentioned, a couple of crazy minutes, and then Union are able to equalise via a deflected effort from Andricht. But two teams in the middle of the table, point each at this stage of the season. No disaster, move on, I think.
Yeah, I think it's two sides that can be really happy with the start to the season. I think not only more performance-wise rather than results. I mean, both sides have only won 1 out of 5, but I think performance-wise they've been on a pretty high level. Both sides can consider themselves a bit unlucky that they don't have another win at least on the board, really. But I don't think either of those sides will be struggling too close to the bottom this year, to be honest with you. They both look solid sides, you know. Yeah. Okay, and then the last game, obviously, because we do have a game Monday night, which Rory will mention a bit later. But Wolfsburg actually got their first Sunday win, well, the first win of the season after 4 previous draws. Yeah, a game where they kind of flew out of the box, really, you know. I mean, they got 2 goals very early on, and then once again, Arminia Bielefeld showing that bounce-back ability and staying in games. And by the end, they were a little bit unlucky that they didn't get a point, I think, Rory.
Yeah, I think... First of all, credit to Wolfsburg, because we have been giving them a bit of battering on this show, and they came out of the blocks really well in that first 30 minutes. Their first goal being seemingly quite a clever free kick kind of play where they played it into Weghorst and he slotted it in straight from that. And then they went for them really after that, and they managed to win the ball high up, pressing Arminia, probably kind of contributed to their own downfall for the second goal, as they've lost the ball trying to play out from the back, as we've spoken about other teams previously. And then Maximilian Arnold is able to slot in for 2-0, and you think, well, this could be any number really. But as you said, Bielefeld have managed to have this bounce back ability. They rarely get hit for a lot of goals, it seems. And as you mentioned, they're able to stick to it and make it a really uncomfortable finish for Wolfsburg. But yeah, I mean, Wolfsburg, after all these draws and quite a lot of negativity and not scoring that many goals, they're still, after that win, this has shot them up the league a little bit. So undefeated in 5. And, you know, you've got to take that really as a fan. It might not be spectacular viewing, but they're certainly showing signs of improvement now.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think obviously it's 5 games unbeaten now. They've finally got that win. I mean, obviously they'd have been expected to do it maybe a bit more comfortably, but it is. I mean, they're still not playing great football, but I mean, it's 5 games unbeaten. They are back into the mid-table now. Another win next week, and all of a sudden they go up to top 5, 6. You know, so it's not all doom and gloom there at Wolfsburg. Much the same with Bayer Leverkusen, who are the last team we'll mention now. They also had 3 draws, and then they won last week. Then obviously the first Monday night game of the Bundesliga season, I think we both predicted a Leverkusen win there against Augsburg at home. Rory, are you going to stick with that prediction for tomorrow night's game?
Yeah, I think so. I think obviously looking ahead, the way that Leverkusen played in midweek, hitting Patrick Vieira's Nice side for 6 goals. They'd been clamouring for goals, and then they got 6 in one game. So if they continue that form into Monday night, absolutely that there's a very good chance that they'll get themselves off to get themselves another 3 points, and that would secure them and start to push them up into a more familiar position in the league. But yeah, in terms of Wolfsburg, they've obviously had a very solid start as well. A win for them, of course, would push them right up there into that kind of bracket of top 4 or 5, which would be absolutely fantastic for them. Promises to be a really good game.
Yeah, I'm quite looking forward to that one tomorrow. I think I also fancy Leverkusen to get a 2-0 win, but I do think Augsburg could make it a little bit difficult, especially for the first half. But we'll have to see. There might be a few changes as well with another Europa League game coming. We know that the German teams, they do like to take Europe very seriously, sometimes more seriously than the league. And I think we did see, obviously, we mentioned earlier with Gladbach, I think we could potentially see some changes with Leverkusen. But with it being the Europa League, it remains to be seen, But I think the Europa League is a tournament that a team like Leverkusen can realistically aim to win, really.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, last year they made the quarterfinal, narrowly losing to Inter Milan. So I don't see why they can't go further this year, to be honest.
Absolutely.
Okay,
right.
So go on. Yeah.
It's prediction time, as always. So, Mark, I think you're going to lead us through your predictions, and then I'll spin off mine after you've gone.
I am indeed. So let's start with the Friday. It's actually going to be starting Nordrhein-Westfalen with Schalke hosting Stuttgart. I've actually gone, these are two teams that have had very, very contrasting starts to the season for me, and I have actually gone for a 2-1 Stuttgart away win. I think Stuttgart have won the previous 2 away games in style, and I don't see why they can't make it 3 out of 3 here. Rory?
Yeah, completely agree. Obviously, we've just started to see, whether Schalke can push themselves out of the mire that they're in, but loving the way Stuttgart are playing. 3-1 for me.
Okay, and then moving on to the Saturday afternoon games, we've got Frankfurt v Werder Bremen. I think these are two sides which are, they're going along the season quite nicely. I was tempted to go for a 2-1 Frankfurt win, but I've gone for a 1-1 because obviously Bremen are quite a tough side to beat so far this season. Rory?
Yeah, read my mind. 1-1. I think. Can't add more on that. I don't think. 1-1.
Absolutely. And then we've got Cologne versus Bayern Munich. Yeah, I mean, it seems every week I tip for a hammering for Bayern, but once again I'm going to go for a Köln 1, Bayern 5 this week.
Yeah, hard to kind of say anything extra on that. Cologne obviously is struggling. I can't even see them scoring. I've gone 3-0. That is just damage limitation, I think, for Cologne.
Yeah. And then staying with Saturday afternoon, we got Augsburg versus Mainz. Again, another two teams that have had contrasting starts. I do like the look of Augsburg at home, and I'm going to go for a comfortable 2-0 win there. I still can't see Mainz really getting a point on the board there. Yeah,
as encouraging as Mainz's performance was this weekend and really pushing Mönchengladbach, I think they're going to struggle away from home, so I'm going 2-1 to Augsburg.
Okay, then we've got another difficult game for Bielefeld at home to Dortmund. I've actually gone for a 2-1 Dortmund win. I do tend to find that Dortmund struggle a little bit in these kind of games. I can still see them coming through with a win. It's hard to see them not doing, but I'm going to go only 2-1 there to Dortmund.
Yeah, I do agree. I think some of these games that Dortmund should be, rolling teams over, they sometimes seem to struggle, whether it's a mentality thing, but I still expect them to win 3-1.
Okay. Pretty similar predictions this week, Rory.
Yeah, very. Yeah.
So then another game, the Saturday evening game is a very entertaining, probably the game of the week this week. We've got Borussia Mönchengladbach versus Leipzig. I've actually gone for a 1-1 draw here. I'm tempted to go for a Leipzig win because they are playing well, but we have mentioned previously on the show that Leipzig do struggle to beat these top teams away from home sometimes. So I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw.
Yeah, I very almost went 1-1. I promise me and Mark aren't sharing notes on these sort of things. We are doing it separately. But I'm going to go for a 2-1 away win for RB. The way that they're playing at the moment is really impressing me. Obviously, they've got a tough game against my boys, Man United, this week in the Champions League. But I think they'll be able to come through that and still get a big win on Saturday. So 2-1 to RB.
Okay, and moving on to the Saturday games, we've got Freiburg versus Bayer Leverkusen. I think this has got a draw written all over it, this one. I can imagine it being a kind of entertaining draw, really. So I'm going to go for 1-1 there.
So I think actually Bayer Leverkusen starting to just hit a bit of form now. So I'm going to back them for a 3-1 away win.
Okay, and then we've got Hertha Berlin, who we know really struggle at home against Wolfsburg. I've actually gone for a 2-0 Wolfsburg win there, just because I can't back Hertha Berlin at home at the moment.
Yeah, exactly my thinking. And as a result, I've gone for a 2-1 Wolfsburg away win. There are encouraging signs as well today from what I've seen from Wolfsburg, so 2-1 to them.
Yeah, and then the Monday night game, another Monday night game next week. I've gone for a 3-1 home win for Hoffenheim against Union Berlin next Monday.
Yeah, agree on the result. I think Hoffenheim will win 3-1 and get themselves back on winning tracks.
Okay, so that's the end of our predictions for next week.
Right, so as always, I get to do my fun fact of the week, and then we're just going to quickly reel off some exciting news for next week's show. So my fun fact is about another superstar striker. So this weekend, obviously Erling Haaland's managed to bag himself another goal. He's now scored 18 goals in his first 20 Bundesliga games as a record, bettered only by Uwe Seeler, who scored 19 in his first 20 back in 1963-64 season. So he's in some good company there, and that's a hell of a start from Erling Haaland. Very, very exciting player. We look forward to the duel between himself and Lewandowski as the season goes on. So that is your fun fact of the week. And then just going on to next week, we're really excited about our guest that we've already just had today, and we've got another guest already lined up for next week, which we're really excited about. So we'll be revealing that in due course as the week comes on our Twitter pages. You may have already seen on Twitter, there has been a bit of a reveal. So we'll be getting into that as well. So fantastic that we've got another guest lined up. And new feature that is going to be coming your way. It's a bit of a spin-off, a mini-series that myself and Mark are going to be doing. It's going to be the Bundesliga Show European edition. So what we're going to do is it's going to be a much shorter segment of a show recording podcast based on the progress of the German teams in Europe, so in the Champions League and the Europa League. So after match day 3, when there's a bit of a break, we're going to be recording myself and Mark and a couple of other friends and co-hosts from Over the Bar team. So yeah, we're really excited to be doing that. Mark, you again excited about how the German teams might progress in Europe this year?
Yeah, I think overall it was a pretty good week, to be honest, last week. I mean, obviously we won't give away too much, but it was, I mean, you probably saw the results, but yeah, I mean, overall it was a good first week. We'll have to see what happens this week, and hopefully I will definitely be rooting for the German teams this year, and hopefully at least 3 out of the 4 I'll be able to get through this year, yeah. And also, Rory, against your team, I'm going to be all out for RB Leipzig this week.
Well, I mean, after a fantastic win we got against PSG, I mean, who knows what we'll produce.
It was a good effort, but I think it was more PSG being poor,
Yeah, possibly. Well, yeah, maybe. Yeah. But yeah, so we're really excited about that. So we'll be recording it in around early to mid-November when that gap comes between match day 3 and match day 4. So keep your eyes peeled. We'll be announcing it via Twitter and all the usual places. So do keep an eye on that. So that's us done. So a slightly longer edition this week because we've had our fantastic guest, Nik, on with us today. As we wrap up, as per usual, please do click the subscribe button. If you're watching on YouTube, that red button in the corner, get subscribing. Do the same if you're listening on an audio podcast. Leave us a 5-star review if you think we're worthy, and leave us a review as well. And then on to Mark to summarize and set us up for the finale and the finish of the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So as always, we do have like a massive range, a plethora, I would say, of articles as well. We don't only provide video content on OTB. We also have a lot of really amazing written quality as well. Also, myself and Rory have written as well articles in the past. Yeah. And so yeah, you can check out our Twitter as well if you're interested in finding out more about them. Like we have moderators who always kind of advertise the new articles. Every day we produce new stuff on just about everything related to football as well, from anything from women's football to internationals to Bundesliga to League One. Everything, yeah. And just let me remind you as well, guys, if you do follow us on our YouTube channel, you can also see our other fantastic channel as well, which is the League One show as well, which is obviously I am a fan of a League One club now, unfortunately, thanks to the 10-point deductions. But you know, yeah, I mean, it is fantastic. I mean, the guys are die-hard League One fans. You know, I mean, I think they've never even watched a Premier League game in their lives. They're so into League One. You know, it's all. So any of you guys who are interested in finding out about the lower league football, or maybe about, or if you're a fan of a lower league club as well, then please check out them as well. And please be sure to check out our website, which is probably our kind of crowning glory as well, the otbfootball.net. Subscribe to us on YouTube, everything you can, yeah, because every little helps, as they say, you know.
Very good.
But yeah, so thank you very much again for joining us, yeah. And
we'll see you next time
with our next guest as well. And yeah, see you again next time. Auf Wiedersehen.
See you later.